What is going on, everyone? It is Connor, your host with the most, back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. We just finished up Week 16 of the NFL season. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty of Clutch Crew Sports. We're down to the final 8 episodes of Clutch Crew Sports, so after this week, there will only be 7 more episodes left. So we're definitely getting down to the nitty-gritty here of Clutch Crew Sports. But on this week's episode, it is Week 16, so that means we're here for the final edition of our Clutch Crew Sports Power Rankings, the fourth quarter Power Rankings. We did this for each quarter of the season. So we did it after Week 4, did it after Week 8, after Week 12, and now after Week 16 will be the final Clutch Crew Sports Power Rankings. And this one's going to be very similar to the other ones. I'll explain it once I get there. But so we are going to go around the shield, and we are going to do the fourth quarter power rankings. My computer's being stupid slow for some reason. But yeah, we are going to be coming at you with the fourth quarter power rankings here. And these are a little sneak preview of some of our picks and our stuff that we do on our sheets. But here we are here. Let me go ahead and scroll down to the bottom. Now, so this is going to be similar format, of course, with the 3 different tiers. We have the lower tier, the red tier, which is going to encompass teams 21 through 32. We're going to take the middle tier, the yellow tier, teams 11 through 20, and of course the upper tier, the green tier, teams 1 through 10. And so normally what I've been doing for each of these is for each team I've been showing, how high or low they rise or fall compared to the previous week. And I'm going to do that here, but you see a second column here. The second column is actually going to be how far they've risen or how far they've fallen since our very first power rankings back in week 4. So there's all 4 of them here on the screen here. You can see the lower tier right now for all of them. So we're going to do how much they've changed since last week and how much they've changed since the beginning of the season. It's definitely, or since week 4 of the season, definitely interesting to see the change there. And so just like last time as well, we're going to be having, basically I'm going to take one team out of the tier that I'm just going to talk about. Then I'm also going to pick one team that for the last 2 weeks of the season I think is doomed to stay here, and one team that I think could potentially, at the end of this, towards the end of the season, climb out of this tier. So we're going to start with the bottom tier here with number 32, the Chicago Bears, who are down 3 spots from last week and are down 3 spots from the initial power rankings. And then at number 31, for the first time all season, the Houston Texans have moved up a spot, and they moved up a spot since the beginning. They have been stuck at number 32 all season, but finally this week they have moved up a spot. I did contemplate moving them up 2 spots, but I decided on keeping them here at number 31. At number 30, we have the Denver Broncos. They are in the same spot as last week and are down 12 spots since the initial ranking back in week 4. At number 29, the Arizona Cardinals, who are down 7 spots this week and down 9 from the initial ranking. The Indianapolis Colts, number 28, are down 2 spots from last week, but up 2 spots from their initial ranking in week 4. At number 27, the LA Rams, who are up 4 spots from last week, and the biggest dropper since week 4, they are down 19 spots from their initial ranking back in week 4. I believe they were all the way up in the top 10. They were at number 8 in week 4, so definitely a large drop for them. At number 26, we have the Atlanta Falcons, down 8 spots from last week, down 2 from their initial ranking. Number 25, we have the Cleveland Browns, down 5 spots from last time and down 9 spots from their initial ranking. At number 24, the New Orleans Saints are up 4 spots and up 1 spot from their initial ranking at number 25. At number 23, the Tennessee Titans, who are the biggest fallers this week from last time, they're down 14 spots and down 8 spots from their from their initial ranking. At number 22, the New York Jets are down 10 spots from last time. And funny enough, they are actually in the same spot they were in week 4. They were at number 22 in week 4, and here in week 16, they're at number 22. And finally, the bottom part of this tier, the Las Vegas Raiders at number 21, up 4 spots from last time, but down 4 from their initial ranking. So the team that I wanted to cover in this tier was going to be the Tennessee Titans, and the Tennessee Titans are definitely one of the coldest teams in the league right now. They are in a full-scale tailspin. They are on a 5-game losing streak, and it's definitely a huge turnaround from, previous weeks. They looked to be in control of the AFC South. It looked like that they were going to be able to easily lock up that spot as, at least the 4 seed winning the AFC South. The Colts, of course, have been a disaster this year. The Texans have been a disaster. And, the Jaguars, they've kind of been up and down, but they haven't really, hadn't really built that much momentum. Now, all of a sudden, here in Week 16, coming into Week 17, everything has changed. The Titans are no longer in first place in the AFC South. They are, they are sitting right now at 7-8, second place, tied with the Jaguars. But the Jaguars do currently hold first place because the Jaguars were the ones who won their first encounter. Now, good news for the Titans is that they do control their own destiny when it comes to the AFC South. As long as they win out, they will definitely make it because they do have another game against the Jaguars. So as long as the Titans win out, I don't remember who they're playing this week. I can actually look and see really quick. So, this week they are going up against the Cowboys, so definitely a tough test there. But if they manage to win this week, and if they manage to beat the Jaguars in Week 18, they will win the South. Going to be a little bit more difficult for them if they lose to Dallas this week. I'm not sure. I'd have to look really quickly at their division record if they can still get in, even if they do lose to Dallas this week. It would be close. I don't think so, because their conference record is worse than the Jaguars right now. So if the Titans do lose to Dallas this week, they're going to have to hope that the Houston Texans beat Jacksonville, because if they lose this week, they are all but eliminated from the playoffs. So, like I said, definitely a huge turnaround for the Titans, who were in control of the South and are now on the brink of being eliminated from the playoffs. Ryan Tannehill looks like he might miss the rest of the season. Derrick Henry has been really the only bright spot on that team. They've had a really tough time trying to get anything going on offense because, when Henry's basically the whole offense, they don't have any really good receivers. Since they traded away A.J. Brown in the offseason, they don't have any good. Their defense has been struggling recently. Gave up 36 points to the Jaguars, just lost to the Houston Texans, gave up 35 points to the Eagles. It's just been a full, they've played some good teams in this past few games. They played Cincinnati, they played Philly, they played the Chargers, but losing to Jacksonville and especially losing to Houston last week was a huge blow to their playoff chances. So that's why the Titans have fallen so far on this list. Now, as for teams that could climb out of this tier, I do think the New York Jets are definitely in a good position to potentially crawl out of this tier, just because they should be getting Mike White back at quarterback, and that's really huge for them. Mike White has definitely been the better of the quarterbacks this year for them compared to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson has officially been benched, and they have two very winnable games here at the end of the year. They're playing Seattle this week. It's in Seattle, but Seattle's another one of these teams that's kind of been in a little bit of a tailspin. And same deal in Week 18. They're playing the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Miami likely going to be without Tua for the rest of the season, so another team that's kind of in a tailspin. So the New York Jets are definitely in a good position. They do also control their fate when it comes to the playoffs if they can win out. If they beat Seattle and if they beat Miami, the New York Jets will be in the playoffs if they win out. So, like I said, another team that really controls their destiny because I will say they might actually need the Patriots to lose at some point because the Patriots do have the tiebreaker on them. So actually they don't control their fate. They do need the Patriots to lose, but there's a good chance because the Patriots do have to play the Buffalo Bills again. So if the Jets can win out, it's likely that the Patriots, if they lose to Buffalo, there's a good chance that happens. So the Jets, at least in that sense, can control their fate and hope that Buffalo can beat the Jets in Week 17, or beat the Patriots in Week 18. As for a team that is doomed to fall down here, I'm going to more so look at next season, I think, in terms of staying down here, because some of these teams at the bottom, of course, no way they're gonna climb out of here. But someone who I think also could definitely be staying down here is the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson has just looked not good at all since coming back. Nick Chubb has also gotten slowed down. The Browns have been having to play from behind a lot, so they're having to rely on Deshaun Watson, and Watson just is not the same quarterback this year. He's nowhere near his Pro Bowl, All-Pro form that he had towards the latter half of his time with Houston. And they have two not so easy games here at the end of the season. Both are road games. They have to play Washington, which that's going to be a big game for Washington because the Browns are eliminated from playoff contention, but Washington, they can, if the Commanders win out, they can lock up a playoff spot if they win out. So Washington is definitely fighting for their playoff lives. And then they have to go on the road at the end of the year to beat the Steelers, which potentially, that could also be a big game for the Steelers if the Steelers beat Baltimore, because the Steelers, they're not, they're still technically in playoff contention, but, a win by the Miami Dolphins would all but eliminate the Steelers anyway. So it's looking very slim for them, but there could still be something on the line. If the Steelers manage to beat the Ravens this week, then the Steelers, what will be on the line is Mike Tomlin's record of never having a losing season, and it's on the road. So definitely I think the Cleveland Browns could be destined to stay down here. But moving up the list here to some better teams, we have the middle tier here, 11 through 20. At number 20, we do have the Carolina Panthers, who are up 7 spots from last time and up 11 spots from their initial ranking. They were all the way down at number 31 in the initial ranking, so they definitely have climbed quite a big ways here. At number 19, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are up 4 spots from last time and up 8 spots from their initial ranking. At number 18, we have the Seattle Seahawks, down 3 spots from last time, but still up 3 spots from their initial ranking. They've still been a surprise. The New England Patriots at number 17, down 1 spot, but up 9 from their initial ranking. At number 16, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are up 1 spot and down 6 spots, however, from their initial ranking. They were in the top 10 at the start of the season. At number 14, we have the Detroit Lions, who are up 5 spots from last time and up 9 spots from their initial ranking. At number 13, we have the Miami Dolphins, down 10 spots from last time and down 9 spots from their initial ranking, which was up at number 4. At number 12, we have the Washington Commanders, who, although they are down 1 spot this week, they are the biggest riser in terms of the season, where they are up 16 spots from their initial ranking, which was all the way down here at number 28. So definitely a big rise for the Washington Commanders. And at number 11, we have the biggest gainer this week, the Jacksonville Jaguars, up 13 spots on the list and up 2 spots from their initial ranking at number 13. So there's kind of 2 teams I guess I want to talk about here. First is the 2 teams that are going in opposite directions. You have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are really hot, and the Miami Dolphins, who are really cold. I'll stick with the Jaguars here to start, because I already kind of talked about them a little bit when I talked about the Titans. The Jaguars are one of the hottest teams in football right now. They got that big overtime win against the Cowboys. And then, of course, they managed to take down, they managed to get past the New York Jets in Week 16, which, coupled with a Tennessee loss to Houston, put them in first place in the division. And, the same deal as Tennessee. Tennessee, like I said, Tennessee needs Jacksonville to lose. Same deal as Tennessee. They control their fate. If the Jaguars win out, they win the AFC South. If Tennessee wins out, Tennessee wins the AFC South. So, same deal there. Jacksonville, of course, has an easier task here in Week 17, where they have to play the Houston Texans, which the Texans are getting a little bit better, but certainly an easier test than playing against the Dallas Cowboys, although Houston does have a 9-game winning streak against Jacksonville, so who knows, maybe it's not as easy. But at least the good thing for the Jaguars here is that they can actually afford to lose this game, because even if they lose, if Tennessee loses to Dallas, then, that's big too. But even if Tennessee were to beat Dallas, if Jacksonville were to lose this game, as long as Jacksonville beats Tennessee in Week 18, they win the division, because they would have the tiebreaker, because they would have beaten them twice. So Jacksonville really, like I said, it'd be good to win this game, but, in all actuality, they really just need to win the Week 18 game against Tennessee, and they'll win the AFC South. Then you have the Miami Dolphins, who, like I said, they're kind of like the Tennessee Titans, in which they're in a bit of a tailspin here. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They looked like one of the best teams in the league, really through the first 12 weeks of the season. They looked like one of the best teams in the league. And something has just gone completely wrong for them. Teams are kind of starting to figure out this offense. They were really deadly at the start of the year with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle looking like the best wide receiver duo in the league. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson were a good running back duo. Tua was looking like an MVP candidate. And now the Dolphins are fighting for their playoff lives. Miami, they're in the same position as Jacksonville, though. If Miami wins out, if they beat the Jets this week, they don't play the, what am I saying? If Miami, I keep getting the AFC East mixed up. If they beat the Patriots this week and then go on to beat the Jets in Week 18, they will clinch a wild card spot. Really, they do kind of all but clinch a wild card spot if they win this week. There's another way they can clinch. If they win this week and if the Jets lose, then the Dolphins will clinch a wild card spot. So there is that there. They could clinch a wild card spot this week, but let's just assume that the Jets win. The Dolphins, if they win out, will clinch that final wild card spot because two of the wild card spots have pretty much already been decided in the AFC. The Chargers have already clinched a spot in the playoffs. They're going to be a wild card because the Chiefs have already won the West. And then the other wild card spot right now is going to go to either Cincinnati or Baltimore, whichever one doesn't win the AFC North. But the Miami Dolphins can lock up that last wild card spot with a win and a Jets loss, or if they win out, they will clinch it because they have a one-game lead on. There's a bunch of 7 and 8 teams in the AFC right now. Like there's New England, the Jets, the Steelers, the Titans, the Jaguars. There's a lot of 7 and 8 teams, but Miami's 8 and 7, so they can clinch it with by winning out. But I don't know if that's going to happen. They're going on the road against a good New England team that, they've got a good defense. Their offense definitely leaves a lot to be desired, but they have a good defense. Miami's defense has certainly been the weakness of this team. They haven't been able to hold on to some of the leads that they gain, or they're having to play from behind. Like I said, Tua's not going to be playing. They're going to have to rely on Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, which definitely it could be a worse situation. There's a lot of worse backup quarterbacks in the league, but Teddy Bridgewater just doesn't have the same skill set as Tua does in this offense. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, New England's got a really good defense. They're going on the road to play New England. And then, of course, they have to go and play, potentially for their playoff lives in Week 18 when they go and play the New York Jets. At least for that game, they're going to be at home. But the Jets are a very similar team to New England. A really good top 5 defense with a struggling offense, but it's potential that offense is going to be better with Mike White at quarterback. We've seen that the Jets have had more success with Mike White at quarterback than Zach Wilson. So definitely not an easy road for them. Hopefully, for their sake, if they do get in the playoffs, they're going to have Tua back. But like I said, this team is definitely not looking nearly as formidable as they did through the first 12 weeks of the season. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are calling the Dolphins, pretenders at this point, that they really have no shot at the playoffs. If they can make the playoffs, I think they could definitely be a dangerous team, but definitely not as scary as before. So looking at teams that could climb out of this tier, I'm going to go ahead and say the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, they looked like they were dead in the water, had no chance to make the playoffs, especially through the first 12 weeks, and even really coming into these final couple of weeks of the season. No one gave the Green Bay Packers a chance. And the Packers, they're really starting to get their act together. They've reeled off 3 wins in a row here. To be fair, 2 of those games were against the Bears and the Rams, 2 of the worst teams in the league, but they did get a good road win against the Dolphins this past week. And the Packers, they're another team here that really, in a lot of ways, they don't really control their fate necessarily, but there's a lot of turmoil that's been going on in the NFC, and they definitely have a good chance because they play Minnesota and then they end the season against Detroit, I believe. So, so at least in that sense, they can knock Detroit out if they can do that. But they also would need, they would need Seattle to keep losing. They would need Washington to lose. So, I could definitely see a potential to where they do win their last 2 games and they miss the playoffs. But definitely a team that was dead in the water not too long ago. Aaron Rodgers is playing better. They're starting to rely on their run game more. The defense of this team has always been pretty good. It's just the offense really sputtered and spattered. They didn't rely on the run game enough. You've got 2 really good running backs in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And it's like, I know you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but, would you rather rely on the run game where you've got 2 stud running backs or rely on a bunch of, unproven, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but, just a very not good group of wide receivers in Allen Lazard, Christian Watson, and Randall Cobb. But like I said, Watson's definitely gotten a lot better. They're starting to build more chemistry with Rodgers. So the Green Bay Packers definitely could be in a position to make some noise in the playoff race here come the end of the season. A team I could see falling out of this tier, and that's going to be the Seattle Seahawks. They're, like I said, it's kind of been a common trend here towards the end of the season. There's a fair amount of teams that are in tailspins. The Seahawks are another one of those teams that are in a bit of a tailspin right now. Geno Smith is even losing his grip on comeback player of the year. One thing I will say for the Seahawks in the midst of this, 3-game losing streak they're in, two of them did come to really good teams. They lost to the 49ers and they lost to the Chiefs, but they also have a loss to the Panthers in there, and they're on a 3-game losing streak, but they've lost 5 of their last 6, with, the other 2 coming to the Buccaneers and the Raiders, two other teams that are not particularly that good. Their only win in that span being a very close road win against the LA Rams. So, the end of the season isn't super favorable for them. They do play the Jets in Week 17, so could maybe pull off a win there. They are at home. The Seahawks are always tough at home. They do have hopefully a easier game against the Rams at the end of the season, but Baker Mayfield just lit it up and went for 51 points against the Broncos last week, and the Broncos, they have a top 10 defense, so I know their offense is really bad, but still 51 points is really huge. So the Rams might not be as big of a pushover as they were earlier in the season with Stafford playing. So definitely not looking good for Seattle here. Like I said, Geno Smith's even losing his grip on comeback player of the year. And if I had to, I just talked about this last week with the awards. And, in my opinion for Geno Smith with the Seahawks, if the Seahawks make the playoffs, then Geno Smith gets comeback player of the year. If the Seahawks miss the playoffs, then I think Christian McCaffrey has to be comeback player of the year. So we'll see how that goes. But the Seahawks, another one of these teams that's in a tailspin. And finally, looking at the top 10 here, the top 10 teams in the league. At number 10, we have the New York Giants, who are up 3 spots from last time and up 4 spots from their initial ranking. At number 9, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, up 5 spots from last time, down 4 spots from their initial ranking, although I'm really surprised looking back now that we had them at number 5 in our initial ranking. I thought that was a little bit high. I think this is kind of like where around they should have been, so number 9, of course, still nothing to be upset about. At number 8, we have the Baltimore Ravens, up 2 spots from last week, down 1 from their initial ranking. So not much change here for the Ravens. Same for the Bengals. They're at number 7, which is up 1 spot from last time, up 2 spots from their initial ranking. So again, not much change there. At number 6, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the same spot as they were last time, up 5 spots from their initial ranking at number 11. So they were the first team here that was outside the top 10 that is now in the top 10. At number 5, we have the Dallas Cowboys, who are down 1 spot from last time, but up 7 spots from their initial ranking at number 12. At number 4, the San Francisco 49ers, up 3 spots from last time. A lot of big major outlets have the Niners as the number 1 team in their power rankings right now. I have them at number 4, but they are up 15 spots from their initial ranking, down all the way at number 19. So they're the second largest riser behind the Commanders over the course of the season on this list. At number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs, down 2 spots, but in the same spot they were at the start of the list. You might notice that with the top 3 here. The top 3 teams are still the same top 3 teams from week 4. Buffalo at number 2, up 3 spots from last week, and Philadelphia back at number 1, up 1 spot. Philadelphia had briefly left the number 1 spot in week 12, but they are now back here at number 1, in my opinion. Team I want to talk about here is going to be the San Francisco 49ers, just because of the meteoric rise they've had all season. I mean, this team is honestly looking like a legit Super Bowl contender. I mean, the only team in the NFC right now that I could see possibly challenging them is the Eagles, but, I have a feeling that this team looks like they could potentially run away with the NFC. I mean, they have one of the best defenses in the league. That front 7 is one of the best in the league. Nick Bosa is currently the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. I know in my last video Micah Parsons was, but Nick Bosa has overtaken him for first place, or at least is the front runner for the award. Still very close between them, but Nick Bosa, like I said, he's looking like the best defensive player in football right now. And just the weapons they have on offense. I mean, George Kittle's a top 5 tight end, potentially top 3 tight end. I'd probably put him at number 2 right now. He's definitely had a better season than Mark Andrews, still below Travis Kelce, but definitely number 2 on my list. Christian McCaffrey's looking like he hasn't lost a step. He maybe not this season just because he kind of had some, sputtering moments with the Panthers, but really since he's joined the Niners, he's looked like the best running back in football. Deebo Samuel's been a little hurt, but when he's healthy, him and Brandon Ayuk make a really good wide receiver tandem, and Brock Purdy. I mean, who would have thought that Brock Purdy would be the one that could potentially lead the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl? I mean, Trey Lance, of course, went down really early in the season with that injury, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, there is potential that Jimmy G could come back. They initially thought that he might be done for the season, but they did some MRIs and found that his knee wasn't as bad as initially thought. So he could potentially come back. But honestly, if I'm the Niners, I mean, if they're winning with Purdy, then I don't see why they would take him out. I mean, from what I can gather, Jimmy G wouldn't be much of an upgrade. So, definitely really cool to see for the Niners here with, Brock Purdy getting his chance. Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL draft, but he's not looking like Mr. Irrelevant right now. So the Niners definitely have been one of the biggest surprises this year. I know there was a lot of question marks going into the season with, the quarterback situation, but if there's any team in the league really over the past, 2 or 3 seasons, 4 seasons even, that has really proven that, you can still be carried, even if you don't have a fantastic quarterback, it's the Niners. I mean, their run game and defense are some of the best in the league. And, I could potentially see them riding that all the way to a potential Super Bowl appearance against whoever out of the NFC. But it's definitely looking good for them. As for a team that I guess I'll go with the team that I think could fall out of this tier. I could definitely see the Baltimore Ravens potentially falling out of this tier. Really, it's more so just as long as Lamar Jackson is out. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to return this season. I know it's likely that for the game against the Steelers, it's going to be Tyler Huntley that's going to get the start once again. Like I said, I'm not sure what the situation is going on with Lamar Jackson. It's definitely something that the Ravens definitely need him for sure. It's one of those things that they've kind of been able to squeak by these past few weeks. They haven't really been playing, really that great of opponents. They did lose to the Browns. But other than that, they beat the Broncos, who, they're a really terrible team, as evidenced by their spot on this list. They beat the Steelers, which honestly, that's a game they probably shouldn't have won. If it wasn't for Mitch Trubisky throwing 3 interceptions in Ravens territory. And it was only a 2-point win, so definitely a game that the Steelers probably should have won. And then, of course, they played the Falcons this last week, who, their offense is just borderline anemic with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. So definitely an interesting situation here. They are still in play for the AFC North as well, too. If they can win out, then they're going to win the AFC North if they beat the Steelers and if they beat the Bengals, because they already have a win over the Bengals earlier in the season. So they own the tiebreaker against Cincinnati. They could, if they win this week, and if Buffalo beats Cincinnati, they'll be taking over first place. So, but like I said, it's going to require Lamar Jackson in my mind. And, I know the Steelers are really wanting to win this time after, really blowing the game last time for, no reason whatsoever other than Mitch Trubisky sucking. And the Bengals are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. I don't see any way without Lamar Jackson that they beat the Bengals in Cincinnati. So definitely tough situation for them there. For a team that I think that could potentially stay in this tier for next season, I definitely see good success going forward for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, there was a little bit of worries for them earlier in the season. If you just kind of look at their spot on this list, they started out at number 9 in week 4, fell to number 15 in week 8. But since that second list, they've been in the top 10 all season except for that second list. And, they're another team that's, really gotten hot at the right time. Joe Burrow is looking like a potential MVP candidate. Of course, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, still a very good receiving trio. There is still some concerns on the defensive side of the ball, but, they do own a win over Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this year. They could potentially also be owning a win over Buffalo this past. I mean, again, they're another team that's in the hunt still for the number 1 seed because, they have the tiebreaker over Kansas City if Kansas City were to stumble here at some point. And if they beat Buffalo, they'd have the tiebreaker over Buffalo. So Cincinnati's definitely not out of play for the number 1 seed here. And they also do still control their destiny when it comes to the AFC North. They still potentially, as long as they beat Baltimore in Week 18, they'll wrap up the AFC North. So this is a team that looks like it could compete for a really long time. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this series of power rankings. It was really fun to kind of do this more as like a quarterly thing rather than a weekly thing, just because I feel like with a weekly thing, you don't see too much change most of the time. It's just kind of arbitrary. So I liked this idea that Zach came up with at the start of the season to do quarterly power rankings. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Make sure you stay tuned for the final 7 episodes of Clutch Crew Sports. And until then, I will see you guys next time.